and welcome to a dragon themed reading vlog. I've got a couple of books on my to be read pile that fit a particular theme. All of them feature dragons and I get to read an exciting new release, so I figured I would chuck them all into a vlog. At the moment I am currently reading two books. So I've got Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons, which I am listening to on audiobook, and then I've also just started Dragon Rider by Taran Matharu, and they are two quite hyped, I think, new releases centering on dragons. I also would like to discuss two other books in this video. One of them is The Dragons of Deepwood Fen, and then the other one is Dragonfall. I anticipate that those two I'm not going to love as much as the ones I'm currently reading, but we'll see what happens, and I'll talk more about the synopsis and everything in my next clips as we get into reading them. There is nothing more cozy than reading a dragon book by our fireplace. While it might look comfortable reading in front of the fire, I have a reality check. So I was reading Dragon Rider in front of the fire, and that book is about Jai, and he is a stolen prince because whenever an army attacks this nation, they take people on as slaves instead of killing them off. And so Jai has been taken from, a prior invasion, and his father used to be a warlord and has a bad reputation because obviously he was, glorified and then killed. And Jai is now working for, he's not a king, but he's higher up in royal court politics, and his name is Leonid, Leonid, which looked fine, but saying it out loud, it's like your neighbor. Anyway, so Jai is essentially the caregiver for this aging Leonid, and in exchange almost, Leonid lets him read the whole library that he owns. So with that, combined with Jai's previous education, it means that he's a clever character, but he definitely does get in his own head. I think he's like 17, and so he thinks that he's further along than he actually is, and that was, I think, well represented in the writing style. But I also had issue with the writing style, not that there was necessarily anything wrong with it, but personally I just found it very simple, plain and boring in a way. A lot of the book was set up, so the first at least 30% was set up, and if you're getting into fantasy, I think this is a great place to start, especially because there was a dragon at a certain point in the book that I was quite intrigued by, but that dragon is probably the only thing that I'm interested in, and I've been told it doesn't really change, it gets to one particular point in terms of the tone and the writing style, and then it keeps with that point, and I'm finding that point only a 3 stars. The way things were executed was just not really enthralling to me, and so I ended up putting this book down at 42%. I gave it a really strong try because I was really hoping to like it, but I think the novice by this author I also put down years ago now at like 6 or 7 pages, or maybe 6% in, and I had a similar issue with the writing style. It just was not gelling for me. So it's unfortunate that a dragon book that I've talked about, that I've personally been hyped about, I love the cover, I think the illustration is beautiful, it was just not one for me, and I'm so upset about it. And then I also started reading The Dragons of Deepwood Fen, which is another gorgeous cover. Like, I love those colours. And I got like 7% into this one, and same story, I put it down, and for this vlog I'm like, hello, time for an update. I didn't finish anything, which sucks. So I'm trying to give you a little bit of a synopsis, at least I did with Dragon Rider. With this one it's a bit more loose because I obviously haven't read far enough for the plot to unfold. But we're following Rylan, and he seems to be playing like a double life because he goes out into the forests and he's ranging, and he's actually bonded to this dragon creature of some kind, but then the people that he comes back to have no idea that this is the case, and if they did, they would probably string him up and kill him. I'm assuming at a certain point very early on he gets found out, and then that's the inciting action of the story, but I could not even get to that inciting action point. I was still very much in that setup phase, and that's just because the writing was not like Dragon Rider. I think Dragon Rider is better if you're starting out. This one was a little bit more complex, and it threw different things in where you questioned it, but you knew it was going to answer it a bit later on. So it was worth sticking to if you like the writing style, but again, I kept tuning out about the writing style. I kept checking how many pages or percentage I was on my Kindle, and I was like, that's not a good sign. When I'm checking how much I'm reading and my phone is easily distracting me, even though it's out of reach. Like, those are signs that either I'm not in the mood to read, it's not the right book for the moment, or maybe I shouldn't be reading the book at all. And it was the third one, so I ended up putting that down quite early on. I did write a quote down, and this will kind of give you an inkling of what the Stark writing style was like. Rylan was, you know, talking in his head almost to the narrator as a bit of exposition, and he was talking about this old mentor that he had when he's navigating the forest and everything. And it said this thing reminded him of the rangings he used to go on with Uncle Beckett. Beckett was dead now. And I was like, wow, that's a bit abrupt. Here is this beautiful memory of the stuff I learned. Also, yeah, he's dead now. Like, okay, all right. So yeah, a lot of the writing was very much like clipped in that way. Yeah, I wasn't gelling with the writing style, and I hadn't even seen the dragons yet. So how disappointing that 2 dragon books that I wanted to read, I just didn't find great. I do have good news though, and that is Sky on Fire. You must know that I am really enjoying this book. Thank the Lord, praise, hallelujah, I am enjoying a book. What is happening? And this one is by the same author that wrote the Ruin of Kings or Chorus of Dragons series, which I really loved. So I was really hopeful that I would really like this book, and I am. So I'm almost finished with it. Once I'm finished with it, I will let you know what it's about. So far, my thoughts are that even though it's a fantasy standalone, and I'm used to reading, you know, massive series that are fantasy, I think this is very well paced. It has a great balance of action versus character, intent, and changing scenery. At the beginning, initially, I was like, I need to just hold on for the ride, because there was a lot that I definitely didn't understand. But it did take the time to explain it and draw answers out of the book the further you got in. And I feel like if it was potentially a duology, or it had more space than just one book, the beginning would have been a little bit more slower and a bit more descriptive in a way, and sometimes the intent of the main character or the characters around her were doing things, and I was like, wait, what's going on? Why are they doing this thing? I'll just, you know, hands off, I'll go for the ride and I'll figure it out. Partly maybe it was me listening to the audiobook, because I don't know why, but when I started it, I was a little bit distracted. So potentially it does delve deeply into things, but I was personally just a bit distracted. So this is one that I already plan to end up rereading. So you can tell by me saying that I am enjoying it. I don't own it physically, but to reread it, I might do that. So I'll let you know what I think properly in my next update on what the book's actually about, because I think people should read it. Unlike the other 2, personally, they weren't for me. So 2 misses, 1 hit so far. I'm glad. I also said that I would read Dragonfall, but I really don't think that I want to. But you never know, stranger things have happened. Now for the good news, which is I finished Sky on Fire and I really enjoyed myself. I'm holding it at a 4 stars, and this time I can actually tell you what it's about. It follows Anarod, and she is living only for survival in the jungles called the Deep. She has a Titan drake that she keeps by her side named Overbite, and Anarod herself can talk to animals. There is a rapid fire sequence at the beginning of the book where a random adventuring party saves her from the local warlord named Sikaron, and after Anarod is saved by this crew, she just wants to go on and continue with her normal life, but this capture was no ordinary meeting. It turns out that this group of misfits really want Anarod on their team because they want to break into Cloudspire, which is a citadel that is ruled by dragons, and they want to steal from a dragon's horde. Not only that, the horde that they want to break into belongs to Neveronimus, which is the dragon that wants to kill Anarod on sight based on Anarod's past. Essentially, it's a dragon heist book with excellent world building in such a short standalone fantasy time frame. I was quite impressed that the pace was engaging, but it also took its time to explain things and have conversations. I really appreciated that because it meant that even though the crew, like I said at the beginning, is rapidly introduced, you get a bit of a description of them later and it rolls out exactly who they are and what they care about. That said, 2 of the characters in the crew I ended up mixing in my own head, but that might be because at the beginning of listening to the audiobook, I think I mentioned in my previous clip, I was a little bit distracted, not because of the audiobook, because of something else. So I kind of missed a little bit of the setup, so that was on me. There was also a significant story at the beginning of the book before we see Anarod, and that had a big supporting factor for the story as it unfolded, and I missed some of those elements because of that you know, distraction at the beginning. So if I'd listened to that, I probably would have been a bit more clued in. Listening to the first part that was setting up a lot of the stuff, I was like, I'll just brace for impact and see what happens. And I'm glad I did, because this story was so engaging. I had so much fun with it. It was so tongue-in-cheek a lot of the time too. It was descriptive with sometimes physical comedy and then also linguistic comedy. I loved the dialogue between the characters. I also really liked the romance in here, and even though the synopsis says a little bit of heat, I would say arguably that there was a fade to black and then there was some tension and kissing build up, but like nothing that would suggest heat. So I would say if you're going into this expecting a fantasy romance, you probably won't be satisfied. So I was a little bit disappointed about that because it seemed a little bit pushed over mismarketing there. It's almost like the publisher wanted to appeal to that romantasy category of people, but I think if you read it assuming it's going to be a romantasy, it's not. It's a dragon heist first, it's Anna Rod's story first and her development first, and there's also romance in there as well, which I quite enjoyed. There were significant leaders in the book over certain points, and I really liked the group dynamic that created. I loved the magic system too, and the dragons. It was just such a good book. So if you're after a dragon heist book, this one absolutely delivered. I should have just ignored the other mediocre dragon books in this video. And, you know, case in point, I have not started Dragonfall. I have no intention of starting Dragonfall. I've heard that the writing is not that great, and so I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to think dragon books and associate it with Sky on Fire, so that I can therefore end this vlog on a high instead of being depressed about another book that I probably am going to DNF. So thank you to Jen Lyons for writing a dragon heist book, because it came at the perfect time and I feel motivated to read again. I guess that's the end of my vlog. Let me know if you've got any dragon book recommendations, preferably adult. If you could, rather than young adult, would be fantastic. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.